My name is Cheryl Erickson, and I'm the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today in guidance, we are going to discuss childlike behaviors in Chapter 11. But before we get started, please ensure that you are reading Chapter 11, as this video is not a replacement for your chapter readings. So when we look at typical childlike behaviors, we have to consider a child's development. So what is a misbehavior opposed to a childlike behavior? So we have some different tools we can use when we're observing our children and interacting with the children we care for during free play. A few of these tools that we use are written records. You could choose to use some video recordings, audio recordings, and photographs. And typically this will tell a story of the child in their free play experiences interacting with other children, and perhaps will explain why the child or the children are behaving the way they are. So a few different types of written observations are anecdotal records or notes, and basically they're objective when you're observing them, so they're factual little bits and pieces of things that maybe a child is saying or telling you during your interactions or observations that you're making while they're interacting in play. And so you can kind of gauge language a little bit and how they socially interact from these little snippets of a child's day, as well as a running record. So the running record is continual documentation over a period of time. It could be subjective. It could have some objective types of notations in it as well. But it is it might document specific behaviors a child is displaying, as well as the notes and thoughts and comments of the individuals that are preparing these observations on the child or children. Event sampling and time sampling are really good tools to use when you're observing young children. Event sampling can really zone in on maybe key times of the day or key moments in the day when a child is displaying a certain behavior, for example, hitting. And so every single time that the child is hitting, doing that type of behavior, you're going to document it. So you're going to pinpoint, how often, is it a particular child, is it a particular time, maybe a certain transition that's happening throughout the day. That really gives you a good sense of why the child is displaying this type of behavior. As well as time sampling, you're going to do intervals of each time a child is doing a behavior as well. So, every 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. So it's really more time related. So you want to zone in on those moments to try to figure out why the child is behaving the way that they are. And then if you can pinpoint, things within time and event sampling, as an adult, you can make some changes within your environment, or maybe be proactive in eliminating some of those behaviors from occurring. So a lot of times with behaviors and why children are maybe having some challenges or causing some trouble in certain times of the day, and it could be because of their physical immaturity. And so maybe they can't sit still, maybe they lack coordination, things like wetting their pants, which isn't really a behavior problem, but is something that is occurring throughout the day that is posing some types of challenge. So maybe because of that lack of coordination or that immaturity in their physical development hasn't fully developed, it's causing some issues. And it could be standing in line and they can't keep their hands to themselves, or they're not able to sit still on a chair. So some children haven't mastered those skills yet. They're still developing, and that causes them to behave the way they do. Undeveloped emotional regulation, and we've talked a lot about self-regulation, and it does take time to develop those skills and mastering control over your body. So emotions are challenging to control, and sometimes children don't know how to express their emotions appropriately. So again, they're still in the process of developing, and as adults, we need to help the children. We need to guide them and work on those skills with the children. So, emotional regulation is one of the most important tasks for children to develop. We can coach them, help them with identifying those feelings, and we've talked about that in previous chapters by labeling emotions, or there's a lot of social stories that you can use that help teach children emotions, books, games, and things like that really work at teaching children those skills. And you could also have a child that you may look at developing a specific curriculum with them regarding developing those emotional skills as well. Undeveloped communication, and this is can be a big challenge for children, and it's a big challenge in the toddler years as well, because children don't have the words, they don't have language yet, and because of that, sometimes they can get frustrated, and when they become frustrated, they sometimes lash out physically. So we can see things like biting, hitting, kicking. And again, frustration, lack words, and also undeveloped emotional regulation works within this communication system as well. So often you see a lot of temper tantrums with toddlers. They just don't understand. They get completely overwhelmed and frustrated, and they may throw themselves on the ground and have a tantrum. And we need to allow them the opportunity to get those emotions out and reset before we can talk to them about what it is that's made them frustrated and work through that problem, giving them the words. Teaching children how to communicate. Sometimes pictures work. If they don't have the words, they can point to a picture. Even getting to know the children and knowing when you can see that their behavior is escalating and intervening before it gets to the point where they get so frustrated that they lack out physically. So there are things that you can do as far as minimizing these, looking at your program, looking at setting up your environment, which leads to less behavior problems if there's more toys, more materials for the children, less waiting time. Lots of different strategies are available to help children with developing those skills. So we do have strategies that will help us and help the child in managing these behaviors. And like I said, with a temper tantrum, usually if a child is to the point where they've thrown themselves on the ground and they are having a temper tantrum, it's really good to give them space to let them get those emotions out. And so I would just say to the child that is having that tantrum, I see you're angry and upset. When you're ready, come and talk to me. So just leave it at that. You're not going to be able to have a conversation and try to fix something at that moment when they're very distraught. They aren't going to be able to listen or hear what you're saying. They've just got to get rid of all that anger. And once all that anger is done, they're going to be able to reset and maybe move on from that situation. So, offering them that time to cool down, to release those feelings, and those things that we talked about yesterday, the reflective listening is really good. When they're expressing to you what is happening, and you're saying it back to them, so that they are understanding or get the message that you are listening and you are there to help them. Scaffolding works really well in showing a child exactly, be there, guide them through that situation so they know that you are there, you're helping them along the way, and then eventually they're going to be able to do it on their own. Role-playing, puppets are really good ways to teach children different skills in fun ways, so they can see how the characters in the story or the puppets work through the same types of situations and problems that they're having. And as well as art is a really good medium to express emotions and release emotions and make children feel better. Undeveloped social skills is a huge thing. There is, children aren't born with social skills. They get a lot of their first social learnings through interactions with parents and families. Some kids just have, I think, those innate qualities where they're just more social than others. And you even see adults in life that lack social skills, and some that are just amazing socially. So it is a skill that really needs to be developed, especially in younger children, and social skills and getting that sense of what is right and wrong go hand in hand as well. So kids do get better socially with practice, and one of the reasons why a lot of parents choose to put their child in care situations is because they get to socialize and interact and learn from others. So just children getting together and playing helps develop a lot of social skills. And as adults, we're there teaching them and scaffolding them and helping develop those skills as well. So even something, and I've spoke of this before in previous chapters, children don't all know how to play and understand all the different rules regarding play, because there is a lot of different rules. The first one being, how do you enter play? If you don't know the norms of asking your friends how to play and you just burst into that play situation, it sends mixed messages to everybody, and it doesn't start it's not conducive to a good relationship with children. So we really want to teach children how to enter those plays by just simply teaching them the words, "Can I play with you?" And being prepared in the event that no, you cannot is said. So how do we teach children that, and what do we do in those particular situations? And so I will speak a little bit more about that in the next slide. But coaching children really does work well in a lot of situations, and guiding that child in that play situation is going to be very effective. So if you see a play situation with children and you are observing it and you notice that another child is watching that play situation from a distance, and you think that perhaps they're going to want to ask to join, or they don't know how to join, watch that, observe those interactions, because you want to be there for all the children, so that play, entering that play is going to be positive, and those children are going to want to accept this maybe third or fourth child into that mix, and something positive happens. So, watch that situation and be there for that child as entering. Play with them side by side with the materials sometimes helps too. You can have a conversation with the child that's watching, saying, "Hey, it looks like you really like what your friends are doing. Do you want to come and play with me? We could play with this." And you can gauge them one-on-one in that same area with the children. And from there, expand that play to start including the other children. And then all of a sudden you and all the children are interacting. You're having some good conversations. There's some fun play going on. Everybody's engaged. And they're all starting to have fun. They're starting to connect, right? That's what you want to do. And then to know when you need to remove yourself from that play situation is going to be key as well, because you want to remove yourself so those children all have the opportunity to connect and play without you. So that is a really good strategy to use, and that I've used in situations. You get a good idea in doing your daily observations with the children where your group of children are socially and who may need a little bit more help, and how you can effectively guide them into those play situations so that it is effective and they are developing some skills and they're developing some friendships is going to be really important as well. Egocentrism and selfishness go hand in hand. Children who are egocentric have some challenges in play as well. They typically don't like to share, still are in that toddler type of age-appropriate development where they feel the world revolves around them. Know that is a normal stage of development. And we need to just work with that child and guide them and have opportunities to kind of model empathy as well. It's not that they're bad or what they're doing is bad. It's just that that's where they are in that stage of development. They have to progress to that next level. So just being patient, incorporating those teachable moments. You can guide and model empathy and sharing situations and things like that. They aren't going to grasp that concept until developmentally they are ready. But it's still really good to offer those opportunities for children to see in the environment. Intellectual immaturity is a common thing with children. It's a normal part of development. It's kids that just don't know the rules yet, haven't mastered that fit yet within that environment, still testing their limits, and we need to teach them as adults. We need to guide them, show them, and we can do that through different games, different rules. Just taking the time. A lot of repetition often works within situations like that. Children learn a lot through repetition. Repetition is often done in singing songs or telling stories. And again, it's a developmental process, and they will learn it when they are developmentally ready. So just in summary, as we close, some of the causes of behaviors that you typically see in child care center could be caused by their lack of development, and they haven't mastered some skills yet. So, for example, the child that's standing in line and is bumping into another child doesn't mean that they're being inappropriate or they are, displaying inappropriate behavior. It could be that it's just a lack of muscle control. They can't control their muscles. And so we really need to be aware of that when we're guiding and guiding that child, because children that lack muscle control shouldn't be put into situations where they're lining up and waiting, because that's when that muscle control does cause problems. Whoever they're bumping into is going to get angry or upset, and a problem is going to occur. Children that lack attention often will disrupt a group time as well, and so that could be because they can't sit still, they're moving around, they just don't have the attention to stay in a group activity as long as the other children. So as an ECE, what can you do to make that a positive experience for that particular child? And it might be minimizing your group time. It might be allowing that child to leave the group and to move into something else for a positive outcome for that child, as well as for the children that want to remain in that group activity. Fine motor control, why does a child spill their milk every day at lunch? It's because they haven't mastered that fine motor control. And so offering them some more fill and dump activities would promote the fostering of those fine motor skills. Wetting their pants could be bladder control issues, so explains why why they have more accidents as well. Hitting, kicking could be a lack of language skills. And to be aware of that. Emotional self-regulation, often if it is underdeveloped, children are having a lot of temper tantrums as well. Social skills, not knowing social norms, asking for things, so they will grab, hit, and kick in order to get what they want. They don't have the skills yet to understand why that's not appropriate. Perspective taking, we've talked a lot about that in guidance, and so children haven't developed those skills of empathy yet. They cannot understand how another person feels. They don't know, they haven't mastered that skill yet. So, fighting, selfishness is something that might be typical behaviors. And not understanding or following rules. And so talking without asking is a typical rule. So when you're in circle, they'll be yelling out things instead of putting up their hand because they don't understand that rule yet. So that does summarize Chapter 11 in childlike behaviors. If you have any questions regarding Chapter 11, please see your instructor. Also, just check in to ensure you haven't missed any handouts or assignments pertaining to Chapter 11.